So we are right in the middle of Lamed Zayin Amid Beis, where Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Kaifer b'mamen sheyesh l'veidim. We're talking about Shavuos hapikadon, right? Someone who is asked to give money and he denies that he owes it, and he makes a shvuah. He's going to be bringing a carbon asham. Yochanan Amar, Kaifer b'mamen sheyesh l'veidim. If it's the money that and it has to be that he's denying money, it has to be something of value. Someone denies that he owes money, and there's Eidim that say that he's not telling the truth, that he does owe the money. Chayiv. He says you're chayiv, not like Rabbah had suggested before. Rabbah had said, once there's Eidim, then your denial is useless. It's irrelevant because you're anyway going to have to pay up because it's going to be Eidim. So whether you deny it, whether you make a shvuah, there's Eidim. So Rabbi Yochanan disagrees. He says, no, you made your kfira. Maybe the Eidim, as we'll see, maybe the Eidim could die. Maybe the Eidim won't show up. Who knows? But b'shtar potter. If it's on a star, it's potter. On a potter, by my time, Rabbi Yochanan, Eidim avidi the maisi star hamanach. He said because Eidim could die, but the star is always going to be there. Star is permanent. So if Shimon asks Reuven for money and he has a star, so it doesn't make a difference that Reuven made a shvuah that he doesn't owe the money, because anyway, Shimon has a star, he's going to have to pay up anyway. So the shvuah was irrelevant. A star also could get lost. So why is it any different than the Eidim? You said if there's Eidim that he owes the money, then the shvuah is still relevant, and he's going to be mechayev a shvuah hapikadon. So even if there's a star, maybe the star will get lost, then his denial with his shvuah will stand. Because when Shimon has a star saying that Reuven owes him money, that star allows Shimon to not just, let's say it was, he said, Reuven owes me $100. It says in the star he owes him $100. If Reuven doesn't have $100, Shimon could go take the karka of Reuven. And now we're talking about karka. They may be in carbon al kfir shibit karkais. And one cannot bring a carbon for a shvuah denying something where he's denying owing karka. As we're going to see, the Gemara is going to explain why karka is different, but essentially it's going to come out. The reason is except there's one Gemara that says maybe it's a pasuk that says it different here, but there the idea is that karka ain't an exelis. We're going to bring a raya from a pasuk that karka is not stolen. So therefore, even though you made a shvuah about karkais, but the karka never left, so it still belongs to the person who it belongs to. Even though Reuven made a shvuah, but the karka still belongs to Shimon anyway. Itmar mashbiya ede karka. This thing that we were just talking about? If Reuven said, if Shimon says to Reuven, "You owe me karka," and Reuven makes a shvuah denying that he owes, that the karka that he's in possession of really belongs to Shimon. One says Yechayev, one says Yepotter. Tistayim, the Gemara says L'chayr Tistayim, the Rabbi Yochanan Dama Potter. L'chayr Rabbi Yochanan is the one who says that there's no shvuah, there's no carbon shvuah for shvuah sapikadon for a shibud of karkais. The Rabbi Yochanan moment sheyesh levedim chayev shtar Potter. Like we had just explained in the previous Gemara, we were coming to explain the statement of Rabbi Yochanan. He says someone who denies money with his Eidim, he's going to be chayev, but on shtar he's Potter. Rav Huna Breder Yeshua, and Rav Huna Breder Yeshua had explained it not because Eidim are going to die and shtar remains forever because he said a shtar could get lost, but rather he said because the shtar represents a chiv of karka, and he said there's no such thing as a shvuas hapikadon relating to karka. So l'chayra, this is going to be the same din. If this machlekes in Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yochanan must be the one who says that Yechayev for making a shvuah on karka. I'm sorry, he says Yepotter for making a shvuah on karka, and Rabbi Elazar is the man who's going to say Yechayev. Even though it's interesting that the Gemara says Tistayim, and they agree with this, and then the Gemara goes into a whole long thing saying that this is maybe a machlekes Tanaim, and it doesn't say that it's going, Rabbi Yochanan is the man the Amru who says you potter on karka. It's just going to keep saying the man the Amru who says it, and it like leaves it as if it's still up in the air. Let's say this machlokes Amoraim of Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar is really the machlokes of Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanan. Actually, Rabbi Yochanan, yeah, that's the machlokes of Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanan that they have of these Tanoim, the Tanan. Hagoizel sada mechaver, someone who steals a sada from his friend. That means Ruvain goes and he puts up guards and he starts planting on a field that belonged to Shimon, Bishat Fanar, and then a river came and swept away the field. There's nothing left of it. It became part of the ocean. There's no field left. Chayav lahamad lo sada. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer. Eliezer says that Reuben has to pay Shimon back. He stole his field. It got destroyed while he was in possession of it. So he has to pay back the person who he stole it from.
He's just go take it.
The Chachamim say no, like you say. Well, listen, here it is. Go. You can enjoy your field. Go set up a beach chair. V'amrinan b'may what's a machlokes? So b'lezer darish ribuyu miyuti, b'rabbanan darshi kloliyu prati. Now we're going to bring a raya from Psukim about whether karka is nigzelis or ain't nigzelis. So we already said that the reason is because whether Hershel Chalafonecha. So the reason comes down to whether karka is nigzelis or not. We're going to bring a raya from the Psukim. So we've had a bunch of times lately. It's come up a lot in the last 6 months. This bifurcation between ribuye umiyute or klali uprati. When you dash in a ribuy, what this means is the Torah often will have a structure. We'll say a klal, we'll say a general statement, then a smaller specific statement where we specify certain things, then at the end another general statement. And there's two ways to look at it. You can look at it as a ribui and a miyat and a ribui. And when we look at it that way, the main thrust of the pasuk is to be marba. We're coming to include everything. And the miyat is just a minimal miyat. That means it just takes out one thing. That means that the main point is the ribui, and the miyat is just it's a small miyat to take out one thing from the ribui. But when you have a klal upratu klal, then the prat is the defining characteristic. We said a klal, but then the prat says, but it has to be like the prat. And that means anything that's like only those things that are like the prat will be included in the klal, but anything not like the prat will be excluded. So it's a much smaller ribui. Over there, the prat is more the operative, the thrust of the lima. So Rabbi Elazar darish ribuyu miyute. Rabbi Eliezer, who said that he's going to be chayiv, that he says karka is nigzelis, because he says it's a ribuyu miyut. L'gabi gneva, it says v'kichash b'amitai. That's a general statement that a person who stole by denying, refusing to pay back, or denying that he owed something. B'bikadin b'shumas yad miyut. Then we say limit it to not every case. Is it going to be gneva? It's only where it was a pikud, something to like a pikadon or tzumas yad. Oimi kol asher yishba chazav riba. Riba umiyatu riba hakol. Everything is included. My riba kol mili, my miyat shtaris. The only thing with mamayat is shtaris. Now, this shtaris is not the same as the shtaris that we were talking about, like Gabi Shavuos HaPikadon. By Shavuos HaPikadon, we were saying that Shavuos HaPikadon represents a chiv karka. Over here, we're talking about when someone steals a note, someone steals a shtar. So what he's stealing in that case is just it's not gufa imamin. You're stealing. Let's say if someone steals a beer note, someone steals a note, a shtar that says someone owes him money. So that's the only thing that's excluded, but nothing else. Everything else is fair game. That if someone stole it, it's going to be considered a gneva. Everything other than shtars. Rabbanan darshi klali uprati. V'kichash amite klal v'kanam shumas yad. I begazel prat. I mikol sheyesh ba'alav chazav v'kol. Klalu prat to klali at the don elkeina prat. In this case, according to this man, the Amar, according to Rabbanan, it has to be keina prat. Ma'aprat mefurish davar hametaltal. It has to be something movable, which is obviously going to exclude karka. But gufa imamen means that it itself has to have value, as opposed to a star, which is only a representation of the ability to get money. I've called up metaltal gufa. The other karkoish a metaltal, and so that excludes karka because it's not metaltalin. Karka is not nigzelis, so this is going to be like Rabbi Yochanan. Yatsu avodim shokshul karkoish. Avodim are hookish to karkoish. Yatsu shtar shaf misha metaltalin and gufan moment. And stars will be excluded because it's, even though it's metaltalin, but it's ein gufan moment. So both manda amrim over there agree legabi shtaris, but the difference between them is going to be legabi karka and avodim. So according to the manda amr who says that karka can be an exelis, that will be like Rebbe Lazar, who said before that that if you legabi Shavuos apikadin, you're going to be chayiv for stealing for kfira legabi karka, because karka is an exelis. And Rabbi Yochanan will say like the man Amar, like the man over here, who says karka ain't an exelis. Man the mechayiv Rabbi Eliezer, the one who's going to be mechayiv, meaning Rabbi Lazar before, who's chaylik on Rabbi Yochanan, could say like Rabbi Eliezer. Man the potter karabanan. The man who says his pot will be like the one who say pakarka ain't exist. Amalei, man the chayiv Rabbi Eliezer. It's true what you said that Rabbi Lazar before will be like Rabbi Eliezer. But man the potter, but the man who's potter, meaning Rabbi Yochanan, would say Amalach Baha feel Rabbi Eliezer might. Even though Rabbi Eliezer holds generally that karka is nigzeles, but here will be maida that legabe Shavuos apikadin, you can't make a kfira legabi karka. The Rachman Alma mikol v'loy hakol. Since the Torah says legabi Shavuos apikadin, there's a pasuk of mikol. That's coming to exclude something. And what is it excluding? It's excluding karka. Amar papa mishmei de Rava masisa nami deika. Our Mishnah is also seems to indicate this. The Tani at the end of the Mishnah, we're going to have to refer back to this Mishnah at great length shortly. But in the end, when we're giving examples of what is considered a geneva, a shibud, a kfira of pikadon, it says in the pasuk, "Ganafti ashari bu oimer loy ganafti mashbiachani va'amar amin chayiv." We said that as opposed to where a case where there's a kefil, which is knas. Ganaftes Abdi like Tani. It picked the case of Ganaftes Shari. It didn't say Ganaftes Abdi. My time. But why did we pick Shar as opposed to an Eved? Lamishum David is Kishlikakais. Maybe even carbon out beer Shivit Kakais. The reason why we picked Shar is because we wanted to avoid Eved. Eved is Hokish Lakarka, and Karka is not included. It's a Raya to Rabbi Yochanan. Amar Papi Mishmei Rava Aim Sefer. What about the Sefer? Zakal Kol Masham Pi Atzmai Chayav Shein Risham Pi Atzmai Potter. No, it's true it said over there Ganafta es Shari, but later on when Marba Ganafta es Avdi, when it says, we're assuming when it says a klal at the end of the Mishnah, it's coming to be Marba something. So it's coming to include even Ganafta es Avdi. You can't prove anything from the mashmayas of the Mishnah. Okay. That was the easy part of today. Zak the Gemara. Shavuos apikadon ketzad tenli pikadon sheyesh li biyadcha. Now we're going to go back to the Mishnah, where it says hayu chamisha toivin oisai. This is about 20 lines down in the Mishnah. Hayu chamisha toivin oisai. We said if Reuven had 5 plaintiffs besetting him, saying that you owe me money. Amru loy ten lanu pikadon sheyesh lanu biyadcha. They all said, give us our pikadon that you're holding for us. And he makes a general shvua. I don't have that from any of you. He made one shvua. He's only chayiv one, even though there are 5 plaintiffs, 5 people who are coming to get money from him. He's still only chayiv one because he only made one shvua against him. Shvua she'ein lecha biyadi v'loy lecha. if he made a shvua that I don't have to you, and to you, and to you. Now be careful that, as you notice, it says viloy lecha. It's with a vav. Then he's chayiv. Each one is considered separate. I'll call achas v'achas. Rabbi Eliezer says until he makes a shvua at the end. He says that it doesn't help if he makes a shvua at the beginning. He has to say lecha, loy lecha, v'loy lecha, or lecha v'lecha, and then say shvua at the end in order to be chayiv separately. Rav Shimon says no. He has to make an individual shvua for each one. Lecha and lecha and lecha is not enough. It has to be shvua to you and a shvua to you and a shvua to you. Okay, now we're going to say, now we're going back to our Gemara. There's more of the Gemara Mishnah, but we'll get to that later. We're going to bring a brisa that repeats this machlokes, but adds in another Tana. We didn't mention Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishnah. Brisa is going to bring Rabbi Yehuda. Tana Rabban. Klal ein chayiv al achas, prat chayiv al kol achas v'achas. Divrei Reb Meir. Our Mishnah had said a first rule that if you said ein lecha biyadi, you only chayiv one, but if you say loy lecha v'loy lecha, you mechayiv separately for each one. Normally, if we have a stam, the Tanakama of a Mishnah, where it doesn't say who it is Reb Meir. So we're going to see that's going to, but it says it a little differently here, obviously, than it said in the Mishnah. It says klal ein chayiv alach. We say klal ein chayiv alach. As if the brisa says if the person making the shvua, Ruvain, who's denying the claim, says it as a klal, he says it as one statement, he's only chayiv one prat. But if he separates them, he's chayiv for each one. Divrei Reb Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer shvua loy lecha v'loy lecha v'loy lecha chayiv al kol achas v'achas. He says, if you make a shvua loy lecha v'loy lecha v'loy lecha, you're chayiv on each one. So clearly, we're going to run into a little bit of a distinction here. Shvua that in our Mishnah we had loy lecha v'loy lecha v'loy lecha as the pratim, as the chayiv of Reb Meir, and now we're saying that as Rabbi Yehuda. So we're going to have to see what did Reb Meir say hold differently. So Rabbi Yehuda says you say shvua loy lecha v'loy lecha yechayiv al kol achas v'achas. Rabbi Eliezer I'm loy lecha v'loy lecha v'loy lecha shvua chayiv al kol achas v'achas. So Rabbi Eliezer is not problematic. He's saying the same thing that he said in the Mishnah. You have to say the shvua at the end, not at the beginning. Rav Shimon also is not problematic. Rav Shimon is going to track what he said in the Mishnah, that he has to say an individual shvua. He has to say the shvua for each one. He can't just say shvua either at the beginning or at the end, like Rabbi Eliezer said, and say lecha and just add everyone lecha lecha lecha. He has to say shvua lecha shvua lecha shvua lecha. Okay, now we're going to have a machlokes about. So let's put out of our minds Rabbi Eliezer and Reb Shimon because they're not really going to be relevant. We're going to go back to the original statement, the machlokes between Reb Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, which the Mishnah, the Brisa did not really explain what it was. We just said Reb Meir said a general statement that if it's a klal, you chayiv one. If it's a prat, you chayiv for each one. But he doesn't say what that is. And then Rabbi Yehuda says loy lecha v'loy lecha v'loy lecha is chayiv. So Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel explains the machlokes like this: Klalei shel Reb Meir pratei shel Rabbi Yehuda, Klalei shel Rabbi Yehuda pratei shel Reb Meir. What Rabbi Yehuda had said is the key to understanding what the machlokes between him and Reb Meir is. Yehuda says shvua loy lecha v'loy lecha is chayiv. He understands that to mean that Rabbi Yehuda is saying that only if he says with the vav you're going to be chayiv. But if you say lecha and lecha without the vav, you just say loy lecha, shvua loy lecha, and loy lecha, then you're going to be potter. That's going to be a cloud. That means if Yehuda holds, according to Yehuda Amar Shmuel, that when you say shvua loy lecha and vil loy lecha, that means the vil loy, the vav is going back on the original shvua. So he says that's why you chayiv for each one. That's as if you said shvua loy lecha and v'shvua loy lecha, v'shvua loy lecha and shvua v'loy lecha. But if you just said, or Yehuda would say, if you say lecha without the vav, loy lecha and loy lecha, then that would be considered all one shvua, and he'd only be chayiv one. That's a Yehuda shita, and he says Rameya holds exact opposite of that. Rameya says what would be the more obvious way of understanding it, right? If you say shvua loylecha v'loylecha v'loylecha, that's all one big statement. That's as if you're being koil everything together. Usually, when you have a conjunctive vav, you have an and. I'm making a shvua on you and on you and on you. That means that shvua is going on all of them together. They're putting them all together in one clump. And Rameya would say, but if you say shvua lecha loy lecha, and a shvua that I don't have to you, and a shvua that I don't have to you, and he doesn't say and shvua I don't have to you, shvua I don't have to you, then they're all going to be separate. It's as if he said for each one shvua I don't have to you, and shvua I don't have to you. I don't owe you anything. So they're diametric opposites, Rabbi Yehuda and Rameya, according to Rabbi Yehuda and Shmuel. That the case that Rabbi Yehuda said is going to be considered to be all one shvua klal, where he says without the vav, Rameya says that's the prat, and Rabbi Yehuda that says loy lecha v'loy lecha, this is really the chiddush tikasvara, that's considered to be separate, because we don't say that the vav is making it all in. The v'loy lecha is making it a one big statement of shvua, but rather it's as if he said a shvua to each one. That Rameya will say no, that's all one big statement. The simpler way of looking at it. V'loy lecha, he just made one shvua. That's Rabbi Yehuda and Shmuel's understanding of the machlokes between Rameya and Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yochanan disagrees with Rabbi Yehuda and Shmuel's analysis of the machlokes between Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Hakol moedim bev'loy lecha shehu prat. Everyone agrees. He's saying, that everyone will agree with this chiddush dekasvara of Rabbi Yehuda, that when you say v'loy lecha, that's going back on the original shvua, and it means that you're making a separate shvua for each one. Rameya also agrees that v'loy lecha is a prat, and obviously he's going to bring a raya from our Mishnah, which brought Reb Meir, which said the Tanakama said v'loy lecha. So that's the reason why it's not so great the way Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel says it. Loy nechleku ela b'loy lecha. The only machlokes is in the other case, b'loy lecha. Reb Meir I'm a prat, Rabbi Yehuda I'm a klal. Rabbi Meir will say loy lecha is a prat, which is he says loy lecha is, since it doesn't have the vav, that's going to separate them.
It's an include.
Even loy lecha without the vav is going to be a prat. Rameya says that, yeah.
Right.
According to Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yehuda I'm a klal. Rabbi Yehuda says that part he agrees. This far he agrees with Rabbi Yehuda and Shmuel. In the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda, they're both agreeing that Rabbi Yehuda says v'loy lecha is a prat and loy lecha is a klal. But what the part that they argue about is in Rameya, in Lagabi v'loy lecha, that they both agree that Rameya will say that loy lecha is a prat, but they're arguing about whether v'loy lecha, that Rameya says, according to Rabbi Yochanan, Rameya holds v'loy lecha is also a prat, and according to Rabbi Yehuda and Shmuel, Rameya will hold v'loy lecha is a klal. That's the only thing that they come out different. The Ezuk, so now we're left with a problem. If Rameya holds both loy lecha and v'loy lecha pratim, where's the klal? Rameya said, klal ein echai v'lachas. What does it mean, klal ein echai v'lachas? What's a klal? Klal Rameya shvuah she'en lecha biyadi, where he makes a shvuah, I don't have anything. Doesn't say any loy lechas at all. That's the only case of a klal. That's going to be considered. It's all one shvur. What is the machlokes? What is the basis of the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan? Again, like we just said, the machlokes only comes out in Reb Meir legabi v'loy lecha. that according to Rabbi Yochanan, he was saying it's a prat, and according to Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel, he was saying it's a klal. So Dayik mi Bryce, so Shmuel Dayik mi Bryce, Rabbi Yochanan Dayik mi Masnisa. Shmuel brings a raya to his shita that Rabbi Meir holds that Vilay Lecha is a klal. He's going to prove it from a brisa, and Rabbi Yochanan will be medayik from our Mishnah, like I mentioned when we were learning it. That Rabbi Yochanan he sees from there that Vilay Lecha is a prat. Shmuel dayik mi brisa, he proves that Vilay Lecha, according to Rabbi Meir, is a klal. As come Rabbi Yehuda, Vilay Lecha prata havi. From the fact that Rabbi Yehuda says Vilay Lecha is a prat, meaning the brisa, our brisa that we brought on the top of the Yamid. Rabbi Yehuda says Vilay Lecha is a prat. Mechlal the Shmael Rabbi Meir Maklal havi. Rabbi Yehuda is coming to argue on Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir just said his general rule that a klal yechayev one and a prat yechayev for each one. And then Rabbi Yehuda comes and says Shvuah loy lecha v'loy lecha is chayev a kol achas v'achas. So clearly that's the part that he disagrees with Rabbi Meir. So it must be that Rabbi Meir holds the loy lecha v'loy lecha is not a prat. It's not the chayev al kol achas. It's chayev one. So that would be Shmuel's right. Mechlal the Shmaya the L'Rameya the Amakol Havi, but Amalei Rabbi Yehuda Prat Havi, and that's why Rabbi Yehuda is responding that it's a prat. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Yochanan says no, the Bryce is not a right. Shavai L'Rameya Prat Havi, both of them according to Rameya, meaning even Vilay Lecha according to Rameya is also a prat. But Amalei Rabbi Yehuda B'Vilay Lecha Moedin Alach. Rabbi Yehuda, when he says Vilay Lecha is a prat, he's saying I agree with you about Vilay Lecha. But he's saying that's the only case that I agree with you. Vilay Lecha without the vav pliga Allah. He say when Yehuda says I hold Vilay Lecha is a prat, Vilay Lecha is a prat, he's coming to say that because I agree with you about that, but I disagree. But my point is that's the only thing that's a prat. If he says Vilay Lecha without the vav, that's a klal. Shmuel will respond to that. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't make sense that he would give his statement after we sang Rabbi Meir's statement. Rabbi Yehuda would say the part that he agrees with him. Normally, when one Tana says his shita, the other Tana says what he disagrees with him about. Doesn't make sense to say that Rabbi Yehuda was saying, I agree with you on this, in order that you should be able to infer from that, but my shita is only like that it's a prat by Vilay Lecha, but loy lecha without the vav I hold as a klal. That would be Rabbi Yochanan's response, Shmuel's response. Okay, so that is the machloikas. That is where Rabbi Yehuda or Shmuel got his impetus for understanding that the machlokes the way he did, that Reb Meir holds the exact opposite of Rabbi Yehuda, which comes out that Reb Meir holds that Vilay Lecha is going to be a klal. But Rabbi Yochanan disagreed. Rabbi Yochanan said that no, everyone agrees that Vilay Lecha is a prat, and as Reb Meir also agrees Vilay Lecha is a prat. The only argument is Lagabi Loy Lecha. Rabbi Yochanan daik masnisin. He's medaik from Elisha. Medekamer Reb Meir Shavuos she'en lechem biyadi klal lahavi. From the fact that he said Shavuos she'en lechem biyadi, the statement of Reb Meir was Shavuos she'en lechem. When he was describing what's a klal that you're going to only mechayev one, he says Shavuos she'en lechem biyadi. He makes a general statement that I don't. He says only one shu. He doesn't say any lecha. He doesn't say loy lecha. He doesn't say vilay lecha. He just says Shavuos she'en lechem biyadi. Klal mechlal. The Vilay Lecha Prata Havi. From the fact that he gave the example of what a klal is ein lecha biyadi, doesn't even give an example of lecha or Vilay Lecha. Vice versa, that he holds both of those things of either Vilay Lecha or lecha. They're both prata. Disal kadaita Vilay Lecha klalahu ademashma lon shvush ein lecha biyadi nishmeinin shvush loy lecha Vilay Lecha Vilay Lecha loy lecha Vilay Lecha Vilay Lecha. Should say Vilay Lechas. And we know for sure if he didn't say loy lecha at all, that's certainly going to be a klal. I'm sorry. I just got a little thrown off because it says 3 loylachas over here instead of 2.
Right, the East look at that below klala like Shmuel was holding, right?
Yeah, so why would you bring Ein Lecha Biyadi as the example of a klal according to Reb Meir? Say whatever loy lecha you think is a klal, use that as the klal because that's a bigger
Right.
chiddush. Shmuel Amar kol aimer v'loy lecha kaimer shvush ein lecha biyadi dami. I don't know. It doesn't not so terribly satisfying. He says no, it's all the same thing. If you say loy lecha, it's as if you said ein lecha biyadi. So there's no. It's not even. It's so obvious to him. Even though we've been arguing about it for the last amud, he said it's so obvious that there's no need to say a chiddush of loy lecha. That's also a klal. Frak the Gemara, Tnan, loy lecha v'loy lecha v'loy lecha. The Gemara asks, before we had this whole complicated raya that Reb Meir holds that loy lecha v'loy lecha must be a prat because it said in the Mishnah ein lecha biyadi, and if ein lecha biyadi was a klal, then that would also. But the Mishnah says loy lecha v'loy lecha v'loy lecha is a prat. So how can you Shmuel, how could you say that Reb Meir holds the loy lecha is a klal? The Mishnah said not like that. So tani loy lecha. You have to switch it instead of it saying loy lecha to loy lecha. Toshma tainli pikad shumas yad begazel v'aveda. It says we have later on in the Mishnah we're giving another example of how a person can be mechuyev separate Shavuos in Mechayiv separate karbanis, where he said, "Give me a pekadan and a tzumas yad and a gazel v'aveda," and he made a shvua that I don't have all those things. It says a vav, and we're saying that they could still be separate. So Gemara Tani Shumas Yad Gazel Aveda. They say that it doesn't say the vav. We'll put it with. You have to change the Mishnah. Tashma Tenli Chitin Usayrin v'Kusmin. Tani Sayrin v'Kusmin. Again, we have to change. We have 3 examples of the Mishnah put in a vav, and in order to justify it, in order to make it that it's not a raya, we take out the vav. Correct the Gemara. This is I think you're going to like this, Rafa. Hi Tana Kol Hachi Shabbos. Can you say that the Mishnah, every time you have a kasha in the Mishnah, just change the lashon of the Mishnah? He made 3 mistakes in the Mishnah, and it was meant to say, it's so many mistakes that every time it meant to say without the vav, and it said it with a vav. Tani v'azil. So tomorrow Elamani Rebbe, we're going to have a different teres. Eina Chanami. This is not going to be. It's not Reb Meir. All these different things that we said in the Mishnah are not Reb Meir, because that was the problem with saying Reb Meir l'chayra. You're tying that Reb Meir holds if it says a vav, that's going to be a klal. I'm saying a vav is going to be a klal, and here we're saying that they're pratim. No, that's Reb Meir. The Amar loishna kazayis loishna kazayis ukazayis pratahavi. He says that. When you say, this is talking about Lagabi the Dine Pigel, Lagabi, if someone made a machshavas, he said one thing with a machshavas Pigel and one thing with a machshavas Chutz Lizmanai. So we say it depends on whether they were together or separate. But the bottom line is, over there, Rebbe says that Kazayas and Ukazayas is a prata. It's going to be considered separate. So our Mishnah, even though it says, Itaka says the Vavs, we don't take out all the Vavs, but it's just going according to Meir, and according to Rebbe, and Reb Meir disagrees with it. Reb Meir, this doesn't represent the shita of Reb Meir. But the first thing that we had mentioned, when it says lecha, loy lecha, v'loy lecha, v'loy lecha, that was the Tanakama. That was Reb Meir himself. Tashma mididei, Aimer afilu chitu sa'ir v'kusmas chayav al kalachas v'yachas. That was not. It's not the Tanakama because that doesn't say who it is. So we're saying that's Rebbe, but when we said this din of chita usayru kusmas, it specifically said in the Mishnah that was Reb Meir. So you can't say that's Rebbe. So tomorrow, tani chita v'sayru kusmas. Over there, we'll have to resort to saying it was a mistake. So the other 2 ones we're going to say were Rebbe. This one there was a mistake. So now we don't have any more the problem that you have to make 3 mistakes. There's only one mistake in the in the reading of it in the lashon of the Mishnah is acceptable, 3 is not. So 1 we were still left with.
Like you changed
That's
one
what-
issue for another issue. Now you have two. Now you have a continuation of a Mishnah without saying clearly who it is, and not continue with the Tanakama.
Well, you're asking a question. You're saying, how could it be that the Tanakama is Rebbe, and it's only part of the Tanakama is Rebbe? I think. I don't think we're saying it could be no. It could be our Mishnah doesn't mention Rebbe at all till the end, till we talk about Chita Sayru Christmas, right? We don't have any raya. We never know. Once we've proven it's Rebbe, that's Rebbe, and we don't mention Rebbe till later. Our Mishnah is not bringing the same machlokes like the Brisa is. Well, how do we? Right, Rebbe is just brought Lagabi Chita Sayru Christmas.
It's like Tana Bashta, like 3 different mistakes. There's one issue being raised, and now we're just exchanging that, saying
You see,
one
you're
mistake.
we're making a lot of complications to avoid this.
Yeah.
That's basically your issue. Yeah, this is what he's going to be forced to say. Back to Gemara, but my afilu. We said Remeyo Aimer afilu chita saru kusmis chayav al kol achas v'achas. But if we're taking out the vav and we're saying it's chita saru kusmis, and you hold there's no machlokes on that, so what's the afilu? If you're saying this is Remeyo shita, but it's not, he's not. We're not talking about. He's talking about chita saru kusmis. You get chayav al kol achas v'achas. That is they're not chaylik on. Yehuda holds the same thing. The afilu is even if he just said a single chita. So he says chita, he says wheat. Even though that one would say that he could say, I'm only denying a single grain of wheat, so that's not even a shava pruta. So the chiddush has nothing to do with the klalu prat, that just has to do with the specific language of whether you could say a single chita or not. Zok Gemara. Tainli pikadon utzumis yad gazel va'aveda sheyesh biyadcha. Tainli chitenu sa'orim. So our Mishnah, like we were just reading, had a bunch of examples. We went through a list of different examples of where you have a person spoke to 5 different people. He was besieged by 5 different people, and he said, Shvuah, well, we don't know necessarily about that. We gave an example. Someone asked, give me the Pikadon and the Shumas Yad and the Gezel Aveda. There were 4 different issues he had with this person. There were 4 things Shimon was telling Reuven Yosem. Shvuah and the Chabiyadi ain't chayav alach. As he says, sure, they don't have them. He's only one. Shvuah and the Chabiyadi, Pikadon, Shumas Yad, the Gezel Aveda, chayav alach. But if he lists each one individually, then he's going to be chayav in each one. The same thing. The same thing. So Dr. Gemara. Pruta mikulam mitzdarefes. He said a pruta from all these different things. You said a pikadon shumas yad gazav aveda. A pruta from all of them is mitzdar. Pligi barach ravina. Chad amar aprate mechayev aklali amar mechayev. There's a separate question. When we say chayev al kol achas va'achas, when he said shvuah she'en lechaviyadi shumas yad v'gezel the aveda, is he in addition to being mechayev for each thing he was mefaret, he's also mechayev. We came across this before. Is he also chayev one general shvuah that he said he also denied all these things together. I don't know anything, and I don't owe the gezel, and I don't know the aveda, and I don't know the shumas yad. So v'chad amar aklali namim chayev, and one says you only chayev on each one, but not on the extra one, and one says you also chayev on the klal. So if you're going to say you chayev an extra on the klal, then you could say if they all equal up to a pruta, that klal you're going to be chayev on. So for the Gemara, how could you say that it's a machlokes of whether you chayev an extra one or not? We say there's 15 chatois, that if there were 5 people who all made this same taina. He's in Mechoy 15. V'nisa esrim havin. It's not just 3. It's not just 3 for each one. It's 4 for each person. So
Why the 4?
Because if you have the klal, in addition to the 3 individual titas iron v'kosmin that he said, you're also going to be chayiv a 4th one for the klal. Let me say, esrin havin. So high tana de prati kachashav the klal kachashav. And no, when we said 15, we were not including that even though there was a 4th shvua that he was over on, he wasn't including that because that's on the klal. He was only counting the ones that are individual. Rechia says there are esrim chatayis. That's not talking about the chitas ayru kusmin. That's talking about the kanshum mishad begezel. That's how he gets to 5 times 4. Okay, we're gonna have to wait to. Maybe we'll try to complete the parak tomorrow. I don't think we can finish it now. No, not gonna be able to do it now. Okay.